All right, everyone, we should be ready to go.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 6:01. I'll identify myself as Ken Pacheco, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. We have here Dr. Brett Sugrafis, also a member of the Board of Selectmen. We have a town administrator here, Mike Mullen. We have Kerry Easterday from the Planning Board / ZBA. We have Jim Aguirre present. We have Chief McGee present. We have Sean Cronin present, and that's all that I know of at this time. I can't see anybody else. There could be somebody else here, but I'm not sure.
Can we have the chairwoman of the Stormwater Committee, Mr. Chairman, Nancy Goulat, just joined us as well.
Okay, so and Nancy Goulat, chairman of the assessors as well, or member of the assessors. I'm not sure if she's chairman, and also chairman of the stormwater. So just to recap the Board of Selectmen's discussion, as I mentioned earlier to Sean Cronin, this is something that's been brought to the Board of Selectmen's attention by Jim Aguirre. And he's mentioned a few times that I know of that we should possibly think about having a community impact fee for houses and new developments that come into town, because as noted earlier, the taxes don't really pay for the expenses of a new house. So that's what we're here for. That's why we're here to discuss it. I'm hoping that we come up with some kind of agreement on this so that we can, this can be taken to the planning board and they can review it and then perhaps have a recommendation at the annual town meeting for something like this. So I do want to give credit to Jim Aguirre because he's mentioned this numerous times, and now I think we're going to take it seriously. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time on a Monday night.
Yeah. So that's my recap on the Board of Selectmen's discussion. Mike, I don't know, or Brett, I don't know if you want to add to, either one of you want to add to that.
No, that's 100% accurate on the Board of Selectmen's discussion and how it came to us.
So yeah, so as a result of the conversation with the Board of Selectmen, So as a result of the conversation with the Board of Selectmen, I believe the end of October, the beginning of November, like in mid-December, we had a conversation with actually Attorney Jay Tolman, who is the counsel for the planning board. And on that call was Dr. Z, it was Jim Aguirre and myself, and we talked about the notion of having a community impact fee, and how it would intersect with the existing state law. So and we had a really fruitful conversation with Attorney Tolman. He described a lot of the pitfalls that exist. He described a lot of the pitfalls that exist with this issue. He did explain that the Cape Cod Commission, actually through a home rule has the ability to assess a community impact fee. However, like any other municipality in the Commonwealth doesn't. But he brought up a few options which we I think are a viable path forward to deal with this issue. And viable options that I think we can move forward with. So so Jim, did you want to explain them?
Sure. And I want to let Selectman Zagrafis jump in if need be, but yeah, not to belabor this, but yeah, I agree with what was just said. I did get the sense from Attorney Tolman that although we could see a challenge legally if we implemented an impact fee, he said that the case law is very minimal on that being challenged. The Cape Cod Home Rule petition is somewhat unique, as Mike said. We don't have anything like that in place. I don't know that we would be able to do anything regionally to get other towns involved to have sort of a unified effort to do so like Cape Cod did. But it seemed to me like it was possible. However, in discussion with him, we got into the weeds, so to speak, about what Dayton is doing and not doing to help offset the costs of its infrastructural needs. And that's where it got really interesting. it seems to me like there's a lot more we could be doing well outside of just the impact fee that we need to look at from all aspects, all boards and committees. And he went into specifics about a few ways to do that, but it's not going to happen by the annual town meeting. What's interesting is that I think this dialogue finally is going to start the process in deciding whether Dayton wants to be very proactive in how we deal with this going into the future, not just from the impact fee scenario, but also from maybe bylaw changes that help put some of the infrastructural costs off to the developer. So, so I think it's a multi-layered discussion that needs to take place, and I think this is the catalyst that we can use to get there. And I just want to thank everyone again for the opportunity to finally talk about this.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Chairman, did you mind if I just added one thing?
Sure.
Did we want to touch upon what Attorney Tollerman said regarding inclusionary zoning bylaws? Or do we think it's more prudent to stick with the community impact fee discussion in terms of how we be going forward?
Yeah, actually, Selectman Z, I think that's more than appropriate. I think that all needs to be discussed. And I don't think we're going to hash it all out in this one discussion tonight. But I do, that was precisely my comment was meant to open up the dialogue, more detail based on the feedback we got from Attorney Tollerman, specifically at what you just referenced. So yes, I think we should have that discussion if the town sees fit. I mean, I'm not the decision maker. We need to do this together, but inclusionary zoning and other things are going to take a lot more discussion than just the few people that are on this call now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, I mean, did you want to make any comments on like, maybe we could present what Attorney Tollerman defined inclusionary zoning as, and maybe that could start the discussion? I'm not too familiar. I did have some questions. Obviously, we couldn't focus our entire discussion around that when we spoke to them. But I did have some concerns and questions about it. But do we want to present like the topic so everybody knows what we're talking about?
Sure, if I may. So basically, the Reader's Digest version is inclusionary zoning is an affordable housing bylaw that's done on the local level. And, you know, for lack of a better definition, it sort of works hand in hand with 40B, but it allows the local municipality to have more control over the development with the developer versus, you know, going back to the state regulation. There are some trade-offs on that, and I'll be quite frank, I haven't totally educated myself on it. The first time I really delved into it was during that discussion with Attorney Tollerman, but I think it's worthy of a deeper discussion, because I think we all know the path that we're on. Two things are going to happen. We can't keep up with our infrastructural needs, and we're never going to meet our 10% threshold. Yep. So perhaps having a deeper discussion about local housing bylaw would set us on that path. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I think this is the start to, you know, a much deeper discussion.
Yeah, I totally agree. He definitely, as you had alluded to, Jim, he definitely had concerns about the community impact fees. And to me, I'm not an expert in this field by any stretch of anyone's imagination, but to me, it almost made it sound like, in terms of the legality and the potential legal questions that get raised with community impact fees, that maybe inclusionary zoning, if implemented properly, might be better to address the infrastructure needs of the town, as well as different housing needs, and while also retaining more local control for things like affordable housing. But I felt like you did. It was the first time I had heard the topic inclusionary zoning mentioned. So for me, I need to do more research on what it is, because again, I have concerns about my current understanding about it, basically, because again, I'm
Sure.
not well versed in it.
Sure. No, I think your assessment is actually spot on. And, you know, although I would agree, I also did some research from the impact fees, and there is very little case law on it. That doesn't mean that we go it alone and Dayton wants to set the bar. It just means that we need to think about it and do it responsibly. In my opinion, Attorney Tollerman was saying that they just as you said, they work hand in hand. Instead of just implementing a fee that gets tacked onto a building permit for new construction, the inclusionary zoning actually is much more tailored to get Dayton to where it wants to be from an affordable housing perspective, but also takes into account the critical infrastructure needs that, unfortunately, we haven't been able to keep up with.
So I have a question about that then. So how does inclusionary zoning help with the infrastructure? I mean, we have, I'm not opposed, clearly I'm not opposed to affordable housing. We have 4 active 40Bs, we got a 5th one that's still out there. So how does the mandatory inclusionary or voluntary inclusionary approach for developments, how does that help us with the infrastructure? I guess I don't fully understand it. Yes.
Yeah. So the way Attorney Tollerman had explained it, let's just say, this is in real simple terms, but let's just say that water and sewer are needed for an affordable housing development. Well, in the bylaw is written, and I don't know the exact nomenclature, this is why we have to do our homework, that developer is responsible solely for the costs burdened to supply that infrastructure to that subdivision. So, we try to do that now, but in my opinion, there are too many people or too many players to try and get everybody to be unified when we go through a 40B. And that's no fault of anyone. No one's made any mistakes here. I mean, we've had unprecedented growth. We all tried to manage it the best we could. But if we can vet this and get this into a bylaw or it's in writing and the developer knows what they need to do when they come to town, I think we're 10 steps ahead of the game. Now, I did think about this as well. If we do an inclusionary bylaw and it makes it too restrictive, what's to stop the developer from just relying on 40B?
Right.
So we need to keep that in mind too. With there's a balance that needs to be struck between the two, so that in the end we work with developers, but we're doing responsible development, and we have a path to our affordable housing units.
And just to add to that, because I think you had said this, but I just want to hit it home. My understanding was we retain local control and the ability to afford our infrastructure projects by designating, for example, that a certain amount of units that are going to be proposed to be built be affordable. And then that way we're more likely to hit that 10% threshold, where then we can say no to, for example, like a non-40B subdivision, and in that way buy us some time in terms of a plan for preserving and expanding those
Exactly.
public services.
Yeah, but I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if we hit that 10%, we can't stop developers from coming into town for regular developments. It's only, we can stop them from doing a 40B. So right now with a 40B, 25% of the houses have to be affordable. So I don't know how we make it good for developers to come in and not go with a 40B when they're going to pay for their infrastructure anyway in their development. They've done that with all the 40Bs. They do the roads, they do the sewerage, they do all that stuff, the drainage and all that stuff. So I don't see how. I guess I'm not fully understanding what the difference is and what would be the incentive for a developer to come in and not do a 40B.
Yeah, Ken, I don't have all the answers, and I don't want to profess that I do. Okay.
Yeah.
This is fresh for everyone.
Yeah.
But and I agree with everything you said. What we don't do right now, though, is we don't charge off to that developer what it costs to get the water to his subdivision, to make it, et cetera, et cetera. We're relying on the ratepayers to do that, and that's where I think we're falling behind. Sewer and water, yeah, they do all their infrastructure in the subdivision, but they don't do anything to create the water that it's needed to serve those particular units. As far as I know, and I wish the water department was on because it's an important one, they're relying on just the ratepayers to pick up the cost for that. And I don't think that's working out too well. If it were, then they would be replacing pipes and everything else throughout the town. So it seems to me like we're a little laxed in that particular category. And having it well defined in a bylaw, at least from what I've read, seems to take away a lot of the guesswork.
I just also want to, I'm sorry, Carrie.
No, that's okay. Sorry. I'm still trying to, so in the inclusionary zoning bylaw, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this fully, is that this only applies to the affordable housing applications. Is that right?
Can you repeat that?
So with the inclusionary zoning bylaws, or if we take this approach,
Yep.
Yes.
this only applies to the 40B permits?
No,
No.
no, because the 40B is already, that's already law. This would be,
Yeah.
from what I understand, any developer that comes into town would have to be, assuming that the inclusionary zoning is for the whole town, would have
Okay.
to provide affordable housing, a certain percentage. Like I said before, 40Bs, as
Okay.
you know, Kerry, is 25%. How do we make it an incentive for a developer to come in and be, volunteer to do the inclusionary versus the 40B? I think it has to be less than.
Yes.
Jim is right. We're not going
Okay.
to hit that 10% for this town unless we do apartments, because all the apartments,
I
even though
see.
25%
Yeah.
have to be affordable, they count all of the apartments. And
Right.
it doesn't seem to be much interest in town to allow apartments to come in to get to that 10%.
Okay, so for example, we have the highly contested, if we have Forest Hills. So say we had this inclusionary in there in Forest Hills, right? Say we had this in place already. One of the things that would, if we had this in place, and I know we're all still learning about this, so I don't expect everyone to know exactly, but one of the things that they would have to do is, if we had it written up this way, is, well, hey, you need to, before you even submit that application, you have to have a percentage set up that's going to be the affordable housing. And you have to tell us where's your water coming from. And if you don't have water, you're going to have to provide the infrastructure
Yes.
to do that water.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now I got it. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Now,
just to
Thank
reset,
you.
Go ahead.
no worries. That was actually a really good example. I just want to reset and just bring us back to where we're at. No decisions have been made. We
Right,
still are
no.
like exploring everything. So we very
Yeah.
well may say, hey, I think let's stay on the community impact fee track, because that's just a straight impact fee for whatever you're trying to
Yep.
build.
Right.
So I just wanted to say that as well, that like we're literally, this is in its infancy and we're all just
No, I
talking
just wanted to
about-
make sure, I was hearing it that this was, the inclusionary was only attached to the 40B. And then I was like, well, how is that going to help?
that doesn't make any sense.
It didn't make sense. And on top of that, I'm like, well, how does that help on a standard subdivision?
Yeah.
So,
right.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
The other point I want to make, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Selectman Z, and thanks for bringing that up. But I think we're at a crossroad right now where development has slowed enough where we can catch our breath and start thinking about this. And we may not reap the benefits of this in the next few years, but all of us can leave a legacy and say, look, we did our very best to try and have responsible development in Dayton. I think ultimately that, from a lineal thought perspective, that's where we need to be. The interesting question that I have in all of this, because as I think about this, and I think about this from a development standpoint, because I've dealt with enough of them, is how much of our existing bylaw do we amend? Because the whole idea is to get developments that come into Dayton to have affordable units attached to them. And does that mean that we modify some of the current bylaws that we have on our books? Like, for instance, the conservation bylaw. I think it was well intended. It's what we call cluster development that puts aside open space, but there's no affordable units attached to it. So do we have the discussion about that too, where our bylaws basically embrace affordable development until we get to our threshold. And then it can be modified at that point if we so choose, but at least it's going to help us get to where we need to be.
A question.
Mrs.
Yes,
Goulart?
ma'am.
So in talking about the impact fees, we talked about developments and water, and I would assume, depending upon where in town this was, sewer is included.
Mhm.
One of the things that came up at a sewer commissioners meeting that I attended last year, and I think Tom Ferry's on this meeting, he was there that night. A question arose during the discussion: can a town department, they were referring to sewer, charge a betterment fee for people being serviced by sewer, even if they don't tie in? And I've had that written down here for a while. I realize this is not the same kind of thing, but if we're going to be talking about impact fees, this is possibly an issue that could be discussed as part of that, because it has been raised at a sewer commissioners meeting. My other thought is doing something about water. How we would really have to look at how that could be accomplished with a town bylaw, because we don't have town water per se. We have water districts. These are not departments of the town. So that's something else we would have to look at. I think any impact fee that we could impose that would help with offset some of the expenses that the current residents cover. These are all things I'm just thinking about as we're talking about this, that especially water in Dayton is different. We don't have a town water department. So per se, we don't have town water like we have in one part of town, town sewer. Just something to think about.
So yeah, and I think, and I think all these like are really important points. That's why I do want to mention Jeff Clunan, like actually from the Water District, has joined us as well. So like it, like at the end of the day, it is going to be a multi-jointed effort here. So we do have the inclusionary zoning. Oh, and also as another opportunity, when we talked to Attorney Tolman, we talked like actually about I&I investments, like in terms of sewer. So if we have a development and if we have a proposed project, that is going to be on sewer, especially that like for like every gallon of outflow, we actually have a reciprocal amount of investment like actually into our sewer system to keep up with. So we have a reciprocal. So we have a reciprocal investment actually going into our sewer capacity as well. So we talked about that as an opportunity too.
Mike, another thought.
Yep.
Since Jeff Clunan is here, there should be a way, if we are able to do this, to help the water district, the Dayton Water District. Obviously, the north end gets their water from Taunton.
Yep.
But as we know, the Dayton Water District has been talking about, we've had moratoriums, looking for additional water supplies, drilling wells and all that other stuff. So it would seem that there could be some kind of a, well, it's not an intermunicipal bylaw, but I don't know, that's what I'm thinking of, but I know you don't have those things. But my thought is, if somebody is coming in to do a development and they're going to be looking for water from the Dayton Water District, somebody's got to say, well, as a matter of fact, we're trying to find water and there's costs associated with that. And if you're gonna build, I don't know, 100 homes, the estimated additional water that's got to be supplied is this. And so this is something else that needs to be looked at as far as some kind of assistance for the water district as it relates to adding homes and trying to have a sufficient supply.
Yeah, we have capital improvement fees, if that's what you're getting at. Our capital improvement fees they progressively, you know, if you put every 5 homes you put in, it goes up. I can't remember the exact figure. It starts at, it's like, is it, you know, 0 to 5 is a number. And then I think I forget, even though I wrote it, I can't remember right now. So if you put 100 homes in, it's like $1.7 million in capital improvement fees. We haven't been reaping.
So that's a real impact fee then, Jeff. That is a real bona fide impact fee then.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Okay.
And that's something we have in play now?
That's in play right now. I changed it a year and a half ago when there was tapping fee, and the tapping fee didn't really what's the word? It didn't really reflect like the size of the development. It was more a blanket tapping fee. And it didn't seem right where, you know, if a guy's building 3 houses and a guy's building 300 or a woman, then it was the same tapping fee. So that didn't seem correct in my book. So we went to more of a 0 to 5 is a fee, you know, then 5 to 10 and so on. Every 5 it goes up. I think we went up like 10 grand every 5, something like that. And we slightly went up on the fees for, there's another capital improvement fee, went up a little bit. So the significance of building a development in town is, it's pretty significant. It was before too, but it's just a little bit.
So Jeff, if that's the case, then, and you say it's a year and a half old, we haven't realized that yet because we haven't had any development that actually would signify any revenue from that policy or whatever it is called.
That's correct.
But it is in place.
Yes.
That's really okay.
I can get it to you. I'll send you a copy. Oh, it's in our bylaw.
Here's one of the problems about it not being Dayton Water, a town department,
Right.
because then we're not fully understanding of all this stuff going on. And again, it's no fault of anyone. We're all doing our very best every day, you know?
Yeah.
So,
every time I update these bylaws, you should have them. That's on me.
So what have you heard of any like challenge to this or any type of, I don't know, legal ramification? Because again, one of the cons, I guess, to the community impact fees was this looming specter of a potential legal challenge. So my question is, I guess broadly, I'm asking, why is it that way for a municipality and not for a water district, which is also a government organization?
I don't know that we had a challenge a few years ago with, I believe it was Stonegate. When that project started, I want to say, Jim, you can correct me, like 04-ish, something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
And then obviously it went under or whatever happened. It took multiple years to get going again. Our fees changed. The new builder challenged it. He lost. He has to pay the new fees because in our bylaws, it states, unless you pay it in full at the time of the fee, the whole development, then you're responsible for any fee changes, something like that.
Right.
So it has been challenged on our end, but it failed.
But it was upheld. So far, it's been upheld, the water district's rate fee.
Yes, and any increase which comes forth, unless it's, like I said, unless it's either paid in full or I can't remember in the bylaw if it's paid in full or if the project is approved to a point, then the fee stayed the same or something like that. But obviously that project took forever. Whatever happened, he lost his little
He
appeal.
did, and,
Right.
and the project's still not done. So I guess
right.
my last, I apologize, everyone. I'm just curious because I did not know the water district had something similar to what we were thinking. So do you expect that any potential monies, I don't want to say raised because it's not like a fundraiser, but any monies collected from this fee imposition or the fee raising, do you expect that that's actually going to be significant enough to really address the water district's infrastructure needs? And I ask that because we're using the same rationale on the town end.
Right. So to a point where you can use that money to bond, as far as you can pay it to bond with. What it was used for in the past was to lower the tax rate to a point. There's a lot of documentation on what's been done when big projects have come in town for the water district. We would have this giant influx of money with building, say Waterford Circle, in 1 year, and you'd artificially throw money into it to lower the tax rate, and then now obviously where we're at, everyone knows the tax rate has obviously increased. We don't have that to lower it. It's kind of you're playing kind of a bad game right there, in my opinion. It should be more flat. Well, where we should be taking that money and putting it in stabilization funds, capital improvements, paying off bills.
Sure. So it sounds like that money would have been or could have been really instrumental at that time. So I think that definitely answers my question. I really thank you, Jeff, for that.
Yeah. I mean, you can do a number of projects with this kind of money, and it can fund your loans that you're doing large projects with.
Wow. Okay.
But Jeff, just to clarify and not to put you on the spot, I think Dr. Z brings up a good point. If the timeline on the raising of your fee structure, specifically about what we're talking about, was in the past 18 months, we haven't fully realized the opportunity or the potential for a lawsuit because of it, because we haven't had any developments that have actually been active during that time.
Right.
So we don't know yet, right?
Right. We did have a fee structure in place that was fairly, I wouldn't say it was high. It was pretty high, and it's not. It more reflects the size of a development, not just a development. So it didn't change tremendously. It changed a little bit just due to sizes. And our bylaws are pretty strong in there where we can impose this stuff. We had a meeting, and all that, and it
I hope
passed.
so. I mean,
yeah.
That's the name of the game.
So hopefully, I could see maybe what's the name of that one? Not Forest Hills. One on 138.
Strawberry Fields.
I don't know what's going to come about on that as far as approvals go and where he's going to take that, but I do feel like I've had a conversation with him about it, and I don't think it's a big issue to him.
Okay.
So would Strawberry Fields be the first one that gets the test case for the new rates or the latest rates?
I guess it depends who starts developing. I don't. Yeah, if they start the first build when we lift the moratorium, whenever that comes, then yeah. But like I said, again, it's not. It's the big change was the tapping fee according to size of development, not plain blanket development. We used to go by inch on pipe. Your tapping fee was so much per inch, and now it's so much per, it reflects how much actual water they're gonna use, not the size of the pipe. It's more in to do with the times and conservation and stuff like that. It reflects size of a development, not because you put a 10-inch pipe in, this is what you get a fee. And you got 3 houses going in. You know, it's not like that. It's more, you put 100 houses in, you're getting more of a fee than the guy who put 5. I don't care what size the pipe is.
The fact that
Okay,
the
I have
water
one other-
district has this bylaw regulation in place, once we get a copy of it, it may be a good place to start to figure out. I picked the easy one first. What can we do with the sewer department? And see how that can expand as far as if you look at what the water district's doing, although the sewer department is truly a department of the town, but it would be a small look, see at, let's just talk about what we could do with sewer, and then move into whether it's bylaw for that covers the whole town, which includes sewer. But I'm just thinking if we look at the water district and try to apply it to the sewer department and then expand it to the town, we may be able to eliminate some of the challenges we might face in doing this. Just a thought.
Well, not only that, if you might add, when your developers are, if you have a developer doing, you know, an off-street development, which is a little different than you running a pipe down 138, capital improvement fees for the people who are getting it. If you have a developer coming in, he wants to tie into sewer, the benefit to that developer is that he doesn't have to put septic systems in, which is a cost. So you might want to look at the cost of the septic system, the cost to the owner to have to redo it in 20 years or whatever it is, have it pumped, to all that stuff, because there's a cost associated with that for the builder, just like there's a cost associated to drill a well, you know, stuff like it. You kind of look at those numbers and say, and I'm not saying middle it, but find a happy medium, and use something like that.
Yeah, find a balance. That's what this all is. It's all a balancing act. Absolutely.
So you're not, so the developer's going, this is a benefit, and yeah, I'm going to pay the money now, but in the end, it's better for me. It's better for them. I don't have to build septics. I don't have to own it for a year. Whatever it is, it's the town's once it's done. It's not mine.
Tom Ferry, are you there? Tom Ferry? I'm just wondering if Tom has any thoughts, because he was at that sewer commission meeting the night I sat in, and I'm just wondering if, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Tom. I think he's muted.
So yeah, Nancy, it says he's there, but maybe it's just a plant.
Aha.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I am user one. This is Tim Ryans.
Yes.
We've talked about the water issue for quite a while. I would like to think that maybe we should look into also what the monies we charge in the 53G accounts are too. If we've done any type of recent study of the area communities to see what they charge in regards to that fact, because if we're only charging 1.5%, 2%, then maybe we should be charging 3 to 4 to 5% in certain categories, and that would probably offset a lot of the fees, of what we're looking to collect in town to increase those monies to, possibly do some extra road paving, that type of thing, in regards to helping out extra monies toward our Chapter 90. So I understand the water issue, we all do. I think that in regards to Forest Hills, you're talking about a different area of town. I guess Mrs. Goulart and of course Mr. Coonan talked about that. I see Mr. Perry's on. That'd be a different situation with them, what their bylaws are at the, in the North Dayton district, to see what, if they can make any increases on their fees or, any type of situation like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, Chairman Pacheco, if I may, Attorney Tolman did actually touch upon that. not in so many words. Of course, he's an attorney. He said it very diplomatically, but
Sorry, Joe.
he did recommend that we push the envelope when it comes to permit fees to generate as much local receipts as we can. And then of course we discussed, obviously you can't allocate that goes to the general fund, but then you can do what we've done over the past 10 or 15 years, at least in my experience, is, fund capital projects with free cash. So, he did say that if we're being responsible in that manner with our fee schedules, that we should continue to do that and not excessively overcharge for permit fees, but do it in such a way where we can continue to invest in our departments. So that's something that we could look at too. I know I haven't raised fees in quite some time. As I said earlier in the discussion, I think this is a multi-layered discussion to try to fix our problems, or at least make a dent in them. But I definitely think this is a good, healthy discussion and a great place to start.
Jim,
Can I ask a general question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Jim, what are the fees that local towns assess for permits versus us? Are we in line with them or not?
Our fee structure is actually slightly higher than some of the other communities, which is why I've been reluctant to raise fees.
Jim, what are you doing over there?
It's not me.
Oh, I think it might be Jeff. All right, Jeff, I'm gonna mute you. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So yeah, that's, again, I'm not opposed to it, but that's why I've been reluctant to do so, because our fee schedule was pretty healthy to begin with. And thanks to the selectmen, you've supported using that money through the years to get things done, and I appreciate that. But it doesn't mean that, if Dayton is faced with unique challenges that maybe some of our other communities are not, then it doesn't mean that we can't go it alone.
Right.
I know we like to stay consistent with other communities, but, I'll say I questioned the fees in Dayton when I first got there years and years ago, before I even put my hands into anything. And I remember being schooled by some of the old timers, and they said to me, "You want to move to the suburbs, you're going to pay." That was the end of that. So anyhow.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of everybody?
Yes.
So just throwing this out there, it seems to me like there's more of an interest, especially given the water district's revelation, about their fees, we'll call them, I guess, regs, whatever. It seems like we're leaning towards, if I'm correct, maybe these community impact fees, whatever we would call them. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Just in terms
Yes.
of how we proceed.
Yeah, no, I think your
moving
impact
forward.
fees for sure. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think two things also. One, in terms of doing some research on this, actually about 10 minutes ago, I had an article up on my screen from Woburn, and they actually for the last 22 years they have actually had a mitigation bylaw in their zoning bylaws. That actually in the article that I had up a few minutes ago, it said that they updated it in around 2019 because they were concerned over getting sued. So they updated it accordingly, but they didn't do away with it.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering. I'm wondering if we. I'm wondering if we have a follow-up meeting and take a look at their bylaw. And the applicability to Dayton.
Mhm.
Actually as well. And I also think if we wanted to invite someone down here from DHCD, can have a broader conversation on the inclusionary zoning bylaw, that could be helpful too.
Mhm.
Yes, and I think you ought to, Mike, send to us what Woburn has done
Yes.
with the mitigation and how they've changed it. Maybe we can look at both of them so that we can avoid some of the problems that they may have
Yep.
been facing, or any other town that has this impact fee that you know of.
And can we compare that and contrast that with what Mr. Clunin sends us from the water district?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think
Yes.
Like that'll be a really helpful model as well, and it's something already in place here in town. So yes.
Oh,
Perfect.
Mrs. Goulart?
Do we have any idea what kind of money anybody has collected, like Woburn or any community that has this? Do we have any idea, or can we get an idea? What kind of money are we talking about for those who've been doing this?
So in the Woburn article I had, and also it involved a land court decision, which is probably why they actually went forward and changed their bylaw. They actually initially had a mitigation payment of $300,000 that was reduced to $50,000, but it was actually $50,000 more than they would have get. So yeah, but I think I can find out from Woburn actually exactly what it entails, and what they could fund with it as well.
And I think it would be interesting to know if they got $50,000 for an impact fee.
Yep.
Was there water and sewer already in the area that was being developed? Or was this one of these, we're going to build a new road and it's going to be 2 miles long and it's going to be all, a really big thing, not per se on the line itself? That would be good to know too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when do we, what do we want to do next? Do we want to get this information, schedule a meeting in a few weeks, give us an opportunity to review this, and because I think it's a little early to go to the potential bylaw permitting proposal next steps, other than we need to all get realize what the options are for us and see what other towns have done and have a better idea. For example, I wasn't aware of the inclusionary zoning. I think that's important to think about, but I think we need to get this material and we can schedule another meeting unless people have other things they wish to bring up or discuss tonight. Is there anything else from anybody?
I think
Yeah,
that's a
Mr.
great
Chairman, I
idea.
just, wasn't this all part of what the Cape Cod Collaborative did down there, where they were trying to curb the growth of strip malls? How this really all came about? Mike, didn't you see that article?
So they have a specific ability through their home rule to deal with this, but we don't have that home rule, so that's why we're different.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to get of where we just started all this, where this, part of this came from.
That is partly, Mr. Rhines, where it came from. The building, I'm not sure because you're on the phone, but the building commissioner, when he started, had alluded to that as like an example, but it is not exactly analogous to our case, obviously. So, but yes.
No, understood. Thank you.
So if we were to talk about like planning something out about like 3 weeks from now, just as a hypothetical, that would take us to January 31st. We could get the information out to everybody. Oh, and then we can also reach out to DHCD and see if they could actually have someone join us, whether it's on the 31st like or any other time around there. Then that gives us plenty of time. That gives us plenty of time if we want to try to have something ready for town meeting. Then that gives us really the ability to try to do that. Like, anyone have any thoughts on that?
So just in general, when we started this discussion, and I won't speak for Jim or for our town administrator or anyone else, I didn't really have like a timeline in terms of we gotta really rush and get this done by the annual town meeting. My thing is, it's been a long-standing issue. We're finally getting everyone together to address this issue that's been permeating for years. And so if it takes us a little while to figure it out, and that happens to be past June of 2022 for me personally, I would be okay with that, as long as we were proceeding in the best manner, given all the information that we're gonna gather about it.
Well, I would still like to have it ready in June. I don't think we ought to rush it and do something that's not going to be good for the town. But I think we can have our regular meetings and we can decide how we're going to proceed. We can narrow it down as to what we're looking for. The planning board can start looking at it. And if possible, to have it ready for June. I clearly understand if it's not ready for June, it's not ready for June, but I think that really ought to be our goal. This has been in discussion for a while now, and I think we ought to start taking some action on it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Goulart, yes.
Yeah, personally, if I could get what Mike was referring to from Woburn and a copy of the bylaw that Jeff mentioned, that would be a big help to me because I could pass on some questions to Mike, any thoughts that I had, and we could all do that and even without a meeting, so that when we do meet, Mike will have he will have had the opportunity to see some of the issues and eliminate the duplicates. And in the meantime, we'll have information that can be shared. So when we do meet, I think we'll have a lot already put together. Whether or not we make the annual town meeting, time will tell. Obviously, we'll have to have a public hearing if there's going to be changes to zoning bylaws, but town bylaws. But I think that's the first step, at least for me it is.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have one question, if you don't mind.
Yes, Chief.
So when funds are collected through these fees, are they just collected and put into general fund, or are they fees put into specific buckets? So let's say we're building an elderly housing development, and that's going to severely impact ambulance responses, calls, and things like that. Can that be put into a specific bucket towards that, or is it just general fund, and then we kind of all still have to fight for the same bucket, even though it's impacting a specific thing? Obviously, water department fees go specifically to the water department to improve their infrastructure, but you know, something specific would be nice for each kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, Chief, that's an excellent question. I just don't have the answer for that.
That's a Department of Revenue question. Now, obviously, what the chief mentioned was elderly housing. Well, we all know elderly housing's got federal money involved, and that's more strings. But in order to set up, let's say, a targeted account for a certain type of income, whatever it is, I think the Department of Revenue would have to weigh in on it. All our permit fees per se now go into the general fund. We know that recently, and I mentioned this, excuse me, that initially when pilot agreements came out, DOR said they were going to be, the money was going to be handled in a certain manner. They've since done an about face, and they're going to be going into estimated receipts. We've also been notified that the Department of Revenue is going to review pilot agreements. So I'm thinking all these pilot agreements all over the state, there could be another change in instructions or anything else. So I just think a general response is, if we do implement this fee, or whatever you're going to call it, DOR is going to weigh in on it, because I'm sure they've done it in other communities.
Chief, in just attempting to answer the part about like, what would the money be used for? Would it be the same system we have now, where it's like, we make a request, pray to Lord that we get it? I think to answer your question, it's not so much the community impact fees, it's like the process that the capital outlay committee will have now. I think for me as a selectman, that would guide that prioritization, that in-depth review that they're going to do and the recommendations that they're going to make. That would guide me in terms of what I would support in terms of spending, because I think they're going to prioritize things partly, mostly, hopefully, based on things like need, immediate need, and things like that. I don't know if that answers your question in terms of where the physical money would go, what account, but in terms of how the infrastructure needs being addressed, I would defer to the capital outlay committee's process.
If I can just add to that, though, the capital outlay committee can only make recommendations, so they're not going to finalize anything. So I think the chief is asking for specifically, if it's housing for the elderly, for example, they may need more ambulances, more staff, or whatever. Are they going to be able to get that money without having to go to an annual town meeting or a special town meeting and ask that those fees or those monies be sent to them? They may have a good argument as to why they should get it. I get that, but it's not a guaranteed thing. So the capital outlay committee will only have recommendations. You know, we're going to look at the big picture, how all these different capital expenses impact the town. But that's all it is. It's going to be recommendations. It'll go before the FinCom committee, and it'll go before the board, and it'll go before the residents. So
Mr.
we
Chairman,
don't have an answer for the chief. Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs.
to
Ford.
add to that, what I said about pilot agreements, I know we've had limited conversations about how money from pilot agreements should be handled. And with the latest ruling from the Department of Revenue that said they would go into estimated receipts, which would close out to free cash, that's a process. But just like the Capital Outlay Committee, when it closes out to free cash, recommendations can be made that say money from pilot agreements in the amount of X, because you're going to know how much it is each year, should be designated to go into pick an account or accounts. All right. And it would seem that if in fact we're able to implement this impact fee and it closes out to goes into estimated receipts, closes out to free cash, it's still sitting there and recommendations can be made at least annually. All right. Maybe not forever, like a revolving account, but again, based on needs, it would seem that recommendations could be made on an annual basis to the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, and to the voters that X dollars from free cash this year needs to go to pay for, and you name what it is. So there is flexibility. Yeah, it's still going into one pot unless the Department of Revenue says something different. But again, as you said, Ken, the capital outlay, the committees make recommendations. So that's not going away. Recommendations can be made by any board or commission or whatever.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just think that if we identify a impact of a project on a specific thing, whether it be water, sewer, fire, ambulance, police, that there should be a connection made to that to affect and go to that specific impact. Otherwise, we're just placing an impact fee on everybody that could end up anywhere. I think it should be connected to a specific spot and a specific thing that it's impacting.
If it can.
Yeah.
If it can be, correct.
May I make one remark on that? I understand your question now better, Chief. I apologize. So going back to 200 William Street, there was a conversation in 2018 when the former town administrator was here as to like what that 3% quote unquote impact fee could go to. And at the time I had made like just a random comment about, oh, we could redo a DARE program. And the response I got at that time was that DOR doesn't allow you to like earmark the money for that specific thing. So to Assessor Goulart's point, we would have to see what the rules were from DOR in terms of could we quote unquote earmark or set aside, use whatever phrase you want, monies for things that we know we'll need based on something getting built in town, for example. But we should definitely keep the department heads, especially the relevant department heads, updated on what we find out as we continue this discussion and check with DOR on that.
Yeah, and there could be guidelines coming down from DOR on this specifically, just like in the olden days. I mean, the olden days, it was special rules, regulations, the whole bit that allowed for the money that the ambulance fund bills out for, for transport and all that kind of stuff, for that to happen. And that's why it's specifically earmarked for that. And that's why the expenses from the ambulance account are restricted, because all those rules were set up to do exactly the kind of thing that is necessary. So who knows, down the road, there could be something along those lines. Again, we're at the mercy of DOR, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but let me say I've become more aware of the day-to-day presence of DOR in the operation of this town.
That's presence with a T, not a TS, right?
Not presents like Christmas presents.
Yeah. Sean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick statement. Excuse my ignorance, because this is new to me as well. But if each department is being asked to assess how much of the service is going to be impacted by a new development, new housing project, whatever it is, we don't have the autonomy to actually use the funding or use that assessment money towards that service. It has to be approved or signed off on by DOR, even though each department is indicating what the impact is going to be based on that macro. If you take the pie and you can start cutting it up per service, DOR still tells us where that can go, even though we're identifying.
Not where it can go. My specific example was before we even had the revenue. I was making a comment about, oh, we should start a DARE program. And the response was, you can't do that. We don't even have like the money. You can't say, okay, we're going to get a 3% impact fee for, in this example, of all cannabis sales from this business, and 1% is going to go towards this DARE program. That was not permissible per DOR regulations.
So cart before the horse on that one. They don't know what that actual number is going to be.
Correct. Once you have the money, if it's a permissible use, I would assume, of course, that DOR would let you use it if it's in accordance with their guidelines. Once money is there.
It would make sense if the correlation is there for the service, then that's where the money should be used.
But you're using logic.
Except an impact, what the chief was talking about, for example, the need for another ambulance because of, and this would affect police. A large development equals X number of people, rough guess. And therefore, there would be a need for another ambulance and the crew to staff it, so forth, so on, like that. Obviously, a increase in population and miles on the street and everything else that would go along with what the police would have to provide would also come into a formula. So what they would be looking for is, tell us what you think the impact is going to be on your department. Another classic one, it's a highway department, okay? The reason why they don't allow everyone to, I'll say, receive an allocation based on income they generate, because we have some departments that generate substantial funds, but it all goes into estimated receipts and closes out to free cash. The whole point is revenue to the town has to operate the town. When there is something specific that comes down the pike, like the rules, regulations, legislation, whatever allowed the creation of the ambulance account and the ability to have a stream of income from insurance or Medicare or Medicaid or private funding, if you can collect it for a specific purpose, that all works. But when the Department of Revenue looks at income to the cities and towns, especially the smaller towns, they're looking at how is this town going to operate all of the services. Now, obviously, one of the things we don't do directly is education. We pay a big chunk over of our tax money to fund education. Somebody else handles it, per se, regional district. But again, when you look at the town of Dayton and budgets are put together, and we go to town meeting and we look at what kind of income we have and what our what we think our free cash is going to be, which when we go to the fall meeting is when we really settle the budget. The Department of Revenue looks at all of that stuff. And we have somebody regularly assigned as part of this area. That is the territory that that person has. So if in fact, each department that generates income, we're allowed to keep some of that income. The question is, how do you operate town departments that don't generate income? So again, you got to look at the whole picture. Like what Brett was talking about, the DARE program, that was around, well, when he was a kid, and I remember it in the schools. The again, the overall thing, and of course, cannabis is a new industry, and DOR and everybody else is regulating that, and they've got rules and regs and everything else. But the whole point is, when you talk about income coming into the town, you got to run the whole town. So that's one of the reasons why these specific funds aren't set up and designated for whatever department it is. I'm not saying you can't make a case for it, and I'm certainly not saying that down the road, if we have a large development and we got to add an ambulance and crews and more highway department personnel and more police officers, there's going to be increases in the budgets anyhow to cover that. Acquisition equipment would fall over to the highway and fire departments probably. But anyhow, that's part of the picture the Department of Revenue looks at. And that's why, for example, the building department generates hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no way they could be allowed to keep that kind of money simply because we got to run the rest of the town.
I've always said the same thing to Jim, Nancy, but he never listened. So I agree.
I've been very responsible with the fees that I collect. Okay. So just to everyone can see why this has taken so many years to discuss, right? It's not an easy topic. But I want to thank everyone for actually having a fruitful and engaging discussion, and I'm looking forward to seeing this through finally. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what's our plan of action from this meeting for the next one?
Yeah, I think Mike suggested that we meet again on the 31st. For some reason, that date rings a bell, so I don't know if I have another meeting, but right now, tentatively, the 31st. And Jeff's going to send us information on their impact fees. And also Mike's going to send us some information on Woburn that we'll all have prior to the meeting so that we can review it beforehand.
Nancy?
Yes.
Is there any research or a conversation you could have with Department of Revenue or one of the assessors pertaining to Chief McGee's question regarding the accounts or accounts? Is it possible?
Well, I think the first thing, I do have a contact name at the Department of Revenue. And I think the first thing I'm going to ask is information about impact fees. I want to see if I'm going to get, oh yeah, you can do that. And a but, or yes, you can do it, but the Department of Revenue, dun, 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 dun. And then look at whether or not, if in fact they say, yes, you can do it, and here's the rules you have to follow. Then the next question would be, okay, so if, for example, there is a large development and an estimated number of people, we believe that's going to require additional equipment at the fire department in the form of an ambulance, because they're going to tell you the money for ambulance, they're going to say, oh, do you have an ambulance account? So it's going to be careful how you do it. As far as police go, they would probably say you would add them to the police budget and present it at town meeting. We all know that at the police department level, as the highway department, and what we have done recently with the fire, if they need a piece of equipment, and not an ambulance at this point, but a truck or a smaller truck, not a big fire truck, it comes up as a special article. So the first thing I'm going to do is reach out to my contact and say, what can you tell me, or where you can refer me for information about impact fees relative to large developments coming into town, so forth, so on.
So Mike, we have a financial management team that's in
Yes.
town with ELS, and I know that we're all going to meet, or some of us have
Yep.
already met with them. I know when I spoke to them, I mentioned what Carver does. Nancy, Mrs. Goulart, you remember, we went to Carver, and their money that they get on their pilot agreements from solar, they put into the capital stabilization fund.
Yep.
They were able to get a new fire station, new fire engines for the fire department.
Library, police station.
Library. So they were receptive to that. They didn't say that we could not do that. So that I expressed my interest, and that's what we ought to do with those.
Right, and
monies.
the town of Rehoboth has also put money away from pilot agreements. That's how they were able to do
Yeah.
some of the acquisitions. What I'm saying to you is the latest blurb that we got since I came on board, it was the old way, but since I came on board at the assessors, that's when we were told it's going to go into estimated receipts and close out to free cash. You can still designate, and that's what I said when your financial team starts talking about this, when we really get some money, this has got to be done. We may have to do it every year as opposed to making it automatic. I don't know if that can be passed at town meeting, but that's what other towns did in the past. So I don't know if that's going to be an annual option. We'll have to wait and see. And I don't really know what's going to come out of the review of pilot agreements.
Yeah.
They're going to be reading a lot of stuff.
So yeah, just in terms of my interpretation, and we are, like as the chairman mentioned, having regular conversations with DLS. I actually have a phone call with them tomorrow. So all the revenue we're talking about is dedicated revenue. So in the dedicated revenue means that it's the funding source. But whatever we fund needs to be approved by town meeting anyway.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we have a funding source, whether, it's a mitigation fee. So whether it's a mitigation account, like for Waterford Village, just an example. But so at the end of the day, we go to town meeting, and say hypothetically we have an ambulance. We're proposing to fund an ambulance. We're proposing to fund an ambulance from a Waterford Village account. That's just the funding source.
Right. And if we put the monies in the stabilization funds, we need 2/3.
Yeah, no, but that actually makes it a little hairy.
Right. A little
more
so
hairy.
Yeah, it really is for big capital projects that would bring before the town. That's what that really is for.
And, if you think about the existing ambulance account, even though the money that is generated from billings, insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, private payment, it's clear that the money goes into the account, but when it comes time to spend it, even whether it's the salaries or paying a payment on a lease purchase, it's got to go back to town meeting. So it's going back to the funding goes back to the account, but it sits there until town meeting says, yeah, you can do that. So.
Yeah. So how does everybody feel about the 31st for our next meeting? Is that okay?
I'm looking forward to it.
As far as I know.
Yeah. So 6 o'clock is a good time for people? 6 o'clock?
Works for me.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
Okay, Mike, and Jeff, you'll send that information to us prior to the meeting. Give us enough time to review
I'll have
it.
it tomorrow.
Yep, appreciate it. And
Jeff's already sent it out over to me as well, so I'll forward it to the group, and I'll forward to the group the Woburn, all the Woburn information as well. And I'll reach out to DCD tomorrow and see if they can make the 31st work too.
So I just need to give you our rules and reg on it. I gave you all the numbers. I just want to give you the reg.
yes.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
Well, I have one thing. I know everyone wants to leave, but
No, that's all right, Jeff.
I don't want to convolute this too much, but listening to Chief McGee and seeing as though we're kind of tightly connected. And I may be speaking out of turn with my board, but seeing as though I already have a fee structure, would it make sense to tie a fee to it that goes to him? Would it be legal?
I doubt
That
it.
goes to the fire chief?
That goes to the fire department through the water district, through a capital improvement that I have. It's
I'm not
already in
sure.
place.
Money coming into the town from any source that is not
General fund.
hired, done through taxation or anything else, it has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. The only
Mhm.
account that the chief has that I'm aware of is the gift account. Like if somebody passes away and you want to do a memorial, you send that to the chief. But what the kind of thing you're talking about is public money. And I don't believe that he would be allowed to accept that and spend it without appropriation. It would have to come into the town of Dayton.
Mhm.
I think your fees.
So we would
Jeff,
have to be like a water and fire district to do that.
Yeah, we'd have to probably be in more of an enterprise account.
Okay. Okay, I was just spitballing.
And I think your fees, like you said, Jeff, I think your fees support me already in improving, being able to have that money to improve infrastructure, which ultimately helps me with fire suppression in the long run, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Flow rates and pressure rates and all those improvements that you're looking to make are gonna help me in the long run.
Okay.
Is there anything else? If
No,
not-
I think we're off to a pretty good start though, Mr. Chairman, so thank
Yes,
you.
I think so. I'm going to ask Dr. Z, because two members of the Board of Selectmen are here, for a motion to adjourn.
Oh my God, I forgot we were in a real meeting. I apologize. Mr. Chairman, I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I will step down as chair and second that motion. Call for a vote. Selectman Dr. Z
Aye.
and Campuchico is an aye. Thanks, everybody, for
Yeah, thank you so much.
taking your time to discuss
That
this.
was a
Thank
really
you.
nice discussion.
Thank
Have a
you,
good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
See you on the 30th.